Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Saguna Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhayaschet Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachanam Pangam Langyate Girim Yat Kripatamam Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Last time we had ended with the killing of Tataka. So Vishwamitra had come and asked from Dasharath, Lord Ram's help to protect the yagyas that he were performing. And initially Dasharath resisted. He said Ram is a young boy. According to Valmiki Ramayana, he was 12 years at the time. According to some other commentators, they say that he was 16. Valmiki Ramayana states that he was 12 years at the time. So then we see that Vishwamitra begins to get annoyed, and then Vasishtha, who is also the Kulguru for Maharaj Dasharath, he intervenes. And then he says that he glorifies Vishwamitra. And then he also says that you don't have to be concerned about your son. They are protecting the whole universe. So Dasharath agrees, and then Lord Ram and Lord Lakshman, they accompany Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra gives them all kind of divine weapons, and then when the yagya starts, so this is at the confluence of the Sarayu and Ganga. When the yagya starts, then Tataka, she comes and attacks, and Lord Ram kills her. We also briefly discussed the pastime of Ahilya. So after this, Vishwamitra, he asks Ram and Lakshman to accompany him to Siddha Ashram. And of course, they're obedient to him. And this is Vishwamitra said this is another place where yagyas are being done for the benefit of mankind. And it's also attacked frequently. So along with Ram and Lakshman, Vishwamitra heads to Siddha Ashram. And then we see this theme pretty much throughout Ramayana, that there are a lot of question answers through which the different pastimes are revealed. So then as they are walking, Ram and Lakshman, when they enter into Siddhashram, they're very much surprised by the strongly pious and benevolent mood over there. There are so many sages performing yagyas, and the air is reverberating with mantras, and the whole environment over there is very, very sattvic. And Lord Ram, he's completely enamored by it, and he said, this is a wonderful place. Tell me more about it. And then Vishwamitra, then he describes the pastime, which I will not describe because you're all familiar with it, the pastime of Lord Vamandev. So the Siddha Ashram was actually the place, ashram for Kashyap Muni. And the Vamandev pastime is a little different as related in Ramayana. compared to Bhagavatam. And we see that happening elsewhere also. That there is a difference in the pastime between the Puranas. There's a difference in the pastimes between different versions of the same scripture. Slight difference, not significant difference, and it's mostly explained as Kalpabheda, because these pastimes happen over and over again with some amount of cyclicity. Some pastimes happen in every yuga. So in every yuga, Krishna comes in the Dwapar, in Dwapar Yuga. Now only once he comes as Swayam Bhagwan, but in the other yugas he comes as Vasudev Krishna. There are some pastimes that happen only once in a Manvantara. And then there are some pastimes that happen only once in a day of Brahma, only once in a Kalpa. And then there are some pastimes that happen only once in the life of Brahma. So only during the creation of the universe they happen. So their cyclicity might be different. The pastimes that happen every yuga, they because that cycle runs every 4.32 million years, they repeat. And the day of Brahma is 1,000 yugas, 8.64 billion years. Life of Brahma is 311 trillion years. So different cyclicity. But traditionally the Vedas and the Puranas, they don't give a lot of they don't have a lot of concern with time, because even though they're considered historical, but they're historical in the sense they're chronological, but not so much in the sense that this happened on this calendar date, because when time begins to cycle, then it loses its relevance, right? If at the end of Brahma's life, the universe is destroyed and the new universe is created, then time begins again. And similarly, at the end of Manvantara, new Manu comes, time begins again. So that's why generally the Puranas and the Itihas, they do not concern themselves much about the time. The focus is more on the pastime, because these pastimes are meant to inspire. There are lessons embedded within them. But it is also mentioned that the same pastimes may occur a little differently in different occurrences. Like Varadev comes twice in a day of Brahma, and one time he is Shveta, his body color is white, and the other time he is Rakta, his body color is red. Sometimes he's Pita, sometimes he's yellow also. So there are minor differences, not major differences, but nevertheless there are differences. So that's why we see that different scriptures may describe pastimes occurring at different occurrences. So there may be differences in slight differences in the name, slight differences in the circumstances. So the Vamandev pastime that is described in the Ramayana, for the most part is the same, but the only difference is that in the Bhagavatam it is mentioned that Aditi, when Indra lost his kingdom to Bali Maharaj, then Aditi prayed to her husband Kashyap, and he gave him the procedure to perform a vrata by which he could have the Lord as the son. In the Ramayana it's mentioned that Kashyap Muni had gone on a very, very long stint of austerities in the Himalayas. For 1,000 years he was performing austerities. And then while he was gone, then Bali Maharaj became powerful and defeated the Devas and was ruling the universe. So when he returned, then the Devas, they came to Kashyap asking for help, because he's after all the father. And because Kashyap Muni at that time, he was full of the piety of having performed all these yagyas. So on the basis of that, he asked a boon for the Lord to appear as his son. And Lord Vaman then appears as the son of Aditi. The rest of the pastime plays out at the same. So the Siddha Ashram is the place where actually the Lord appears as the son of Kashyap and Aditi. So at this place, Vishwamitra mentions that we have been trying to perform yajna for a long time, but it is always getting disturbed one way or the other. So he says to Ram Lakshman, you guard, because I am going to be doing a Maun Vrata. So for 6 days I will not speak anything. And this yajna will culminate after 6 days. So you stay alert. So for 6 days, Ram and Lakshman, they guarded the yajna. And towards the end of the 6th day, when the yajna was about to be finished, then they noticed that there were a lot of inauspicious signs that were coming. So it suddenly became overcast, and there was thunder and rumbling, and there was shrieking sounds. So Ram and Lakshman, understanding that the yajna is now being attacked, they readied their bow and arrow. And sure enough, in a short period of time, the two sons of Tataka, Subahu and Marichi, they came, and they were both enormous and very, very powerful. And they came with a whole army of Rakshasas. And they started putting blood and pus and stool at the various yajnas, decorating the yajnas. So Ram and Lakshman, they immediately began to shoot arrows, killing all these Rakshasas. So Subahu became very, very angry when he saw how his companions were being killed. And he wanted to take revenge for the killing of his mother also. So with great anger, he jumped towards Lord Ram, and Lord Ram shot him and killed him. And then Manij, seeing that his brother was dead, and he attacked. And Lord Ram shot an arrow that hit him in his chest. And it threw him 100 yojanas away. So a yojan is 7 miles. So 700 miles away. So he essentially, it is said, he fell into the waters of the ocean. And he was so amazed by the power of Lord Ram that he got up from there, and he simply did not turn back. He simply went away. He continued to travel west until he found land. There he built a small kutir for himself and started doing meditation. According to some acharyas, that this was in Mauritius, present day Mauritius. So eventually all these Rakshasas were killed, and the sages were able to once again sanctify the environment and complete the performance of their yajna. So now that everything is auspicious, again, the sages, they held a Ishtagoshti, a discussion. And and they all shared that we are all planning to go to Mithila, the kingdom of Lord Janak. And so Lord Rama said, why are you going there? He said, oh, he has a big bow. And it is Lord Shiva's bow. That was, in ancient time, it was crafted by Vishwakarma. So he made two bows. One he gave to Lord Shiva, and one was taken by Lord Vishnu. And Lord Shiva used this bow in his battle against the Asuras. And then after that, once he was pleased by the worship and the yajna done by Devavrata. So Devavrata is the grandfather of the present King Janak. So he said that he was pleased by him, so he gave him that bow. That you keep it as a gift from me. And they said this bow is so large that it takes more than 350 people who are immensely strong to move it from one place to another. Now, they don't tell about Sita Devi. And they also do not ask Lord Ram to accompany. And the understanding is that this was because of proper protocol. However, Vishwamitra, at that point, he tells Lord Ram that I am also going there. You can come with me. So it's a little bit of a delicate, because Lord Ram is a prince. And protocol is that to go to another kingdom, you have to be invited, you have to accept the invitation, then you can go. The sages are in a different category. They travel everywhere, they are welcomed everywhere, but different for others, especially princes. So the acharyas say that, but there is another overriding principle which is called ahuto advaryam gachet. So one does not need an invitation to attend a spiritual practice. So when somebody throws a party, then you would expect to be invited before you go there. But if somebody is having Harinam in their house, then people are not very much concerned. They'll show up. Even the host is not concerned. I remember once we had a program in our house for Indradumna Maharaj. He does not come very often here. And we had invited maybe 20-25 devotees to come to our house and cook prasadam accordingly. And Maharaj came, and maybe 10-15 devotees came. So we said, okay, some prasadam will be left. And then within the next hour, almost 100 devotees came. And I remember looking out from the window, and there were cars all the way from, we were living in a different house, all the way from our driveway to the main street. There were cars end to end. And then Indulekha and I, we panicked. We said, we don't have prasadam. So we started going to the kitchen, and then on the kitchen there were rows and rows of prasadam. Everybody had come with some kind of prasadam. It was not the most well coordinated prasadam, but there was so much prasadam. So that's the principle, that where there is Krishna Katha, where there is spiritual activities that are going on, then ahuto adivaryam gachet. You can go. Ahuto means even if you don't get a time, without any time, even if you don't have an appointment, you can go. And the sages also, they are talking about the bow because they know that Lord Ram, as a Kshatriya, is more interested in weapons also. Now it so happens to be Lord Shiva's bow, but they're also trying to get him to inspire him to come. Now, only Vishwamitra knew that Maharaj Janak was planning to do a Swayamvar for Sita Devi. The sages did not even know that. They actually believed that it was a yagya to worship the bow of Lord Shiva. So when Vishwamitra said that Lord Ram and Lakshman, they readily agreed, because Dasharatha had given them clear instructions that whatever Vishwamitra says, you do. So they were scrupulously following the instructions of their father. So on the day before they were departing Siddha Ashram, everybody was sitting, and the son of Gautam Rishi, he begins to tell the pastime of Vishwamitra. Now Vishwamitra himself is sitting over there, and the pastime is pretty elaborate, and it goes on for a while. It goes on, and embedded in it are some other pastimes. So Vishwamitra is a classical example of the changes that can be affected by the influence of devotional service. That he was a very fierce Kshatriya and a very feared warrior. His main thing was going out and conquering and subjugating. And from that, he came to a point where he was a Brahma Rishi and very much loved. It is only because of the influence of bhakti. And all this, the son of Gautam Rishi is speaking while Vishwamitra is quietly sitting and listening to him. So he says that, he begins with Brahma, of course. He says, Brahma had a son, a Manasputra, by the name of Kusha. And Kusha, he married Vidarbha. 4 sons were born. The eldest of the son was Kushamba. So, I'm sorry, eldest was Kushanab. Kushanab in the Bhagavatam is known as Kushamba. Names are slightly different. But because we are doing Ramayana, we'll stay with the Ramayana name. His name was Kushanab. And Kusha, the son of Brahma, he asked his 4 sons to establish 4 cities. So following that, each of the sons, they established a city. Kushanab, he built the city of Kaushambi. And Kaushambi is present day Kanyakubja. And one of the other sons, Vasu, he built the city known as Girivraja, which is present day Rajgir. So these are all cities in Uttar Pradesh. Kanyakubja is actually the ancient name of Kanpur, the city of Kanpur. Rajgir, that I'm not sure where it is. So Kushanab, over time, he married an Apsara by the name of Gritachi. So Gritachi is one of the popular Apsaras that Indra sends to disturb other people. And Gritachi is also, she appears later on, and that was of course unintentional, that she appears and she disturbs Varun and Mitra. And by their semen, 3 great personalities are created, Vashishta, Valmiki, and Agastya Rishi. But this of course predates that pastime. So Gritachi marries Kushanab, and she has 100 beautiful daughters. Because Gritachi is one of the most beautiful Apsara, they inherit their beauty from the mother. And not only were they beautiful to look at, they were also of a cheerful disposition, happy, very, very pious, full of good qualities. So once, when these young girls were out in the garden, and they were having a generally good time, they were playing, and Vayu saw them, and he became infatuated. So he came and propositioned them, which is not a nice thing to do. So he said that I am Vayu. I am one of the most powerful devas. So you marry me. Because right now you are young, you are beautiful, but you are human. So over time you will become old. But if you marry me, then I promise you eternal youth. For as long as you live, you will be young and vibrant and beautiful. So these girls did not like the proposition of Vayu. And they said that it is impossible for us to even think about something like that. If you are interested in our hand in marriage, you should go to our father Kushanab and put your request over there. And they also criticized him. They said, you say you are a god, but it looks like you have a lusty disposition. So Vayu got upset. And as they say that, a suitor who is spurned becomes vicious. So one moment he was glorifying the beauty of the girls, he was propositioning them, and after being rejected, he becomes very angry at them. So he enters into the body of all these girls and deforms them. So they become hunchbacked, the face becomes deformed, the body becomes twisted. So the 100 girls, the sisters, they go back to the palace, and Kushanab is shocked to see them. So you were pretty okay when you went. What happened to you? So they narrated everything that happened. And first thing Kushanab does is that he glorifies his daughters. He says, I'm very happy that you have demonstrated the virtues that I had hoped to instill in you. And the virtue actually that he glorifies is that of forgiveness. So he says, I know you are chaste girls. I know that you could have cursed Vayu, but you chose not to do so. And for girls, beauty is important. He destroyed your beauty, but you still chose to forgive him. So, and Kushanab also himself was powerful enough to punish Vayu. But he also decides not to do so. But nevertheless, as a father, he has a responsibility to marry his daughters. So he calls an assembly of his ministers and he says, this is what has happened, what to do. So then the ministers, they bring his attention. So they talk about a very exalted sage by the name of Chuli. And Chuli was completely absorbed in performing austerities, meditation, and in his performance, he was assisted by a Gandharvi known as Somat. So Somat was very, very scrupulously serving Chuli for a very long time. She was not his wife, but out of respect for him, she was serving him. So after a long time, Chuli, he was very pleased at Somat, and he said that you ask for any benedictions. You've been serving me for such a long time. Ask me for any benediction. Now, Somata, being a woman, she said, I want a son. I want a qualified son. So Chuli, by the power of his mind, he created a son for Somada. The name of the son was Brahmadatta. And Chuli said this son will be repository of all good qualities, virtues, many benedictions he gave for the son. And then over time, Brahmadatta, he grew up to be a king, and he was ruling the kingdom of Kampilya. So the ministers, they told Kushanab that Brahmadatta is not married, and he is a suitable husband for your daughters. So you go and ask him. So on the suggestion of the ministers, Kushanab, he approached Brahmadatta, and of course he told him that my daughters are deformed because of the curse of Vayu, but they are good qualities, and I would like to offer them in marriage to you. And Brahmadatta agreed. So at the time of the marriage, as each of the sisters was married to Brahmadatta, he took their hand in his own hand, and because of his own prowess, as soon as he touched them, the effect of Vayudev disappeared. And the girls, they manifested their original beauty. So they began to happily live with Brahmadatta. Now, Kushanab, over time, he desired to have a son. So, again, with the consultation of the Brahmins and the ministers, he decided to have a Putrakamesthira Yagya. So, before the commencement of the Yagya, Kushanab's father, Kusha, who was the son of Brahma, he appeared. And he gave many benedictions that this Yagya will be successful, the son you will have will be highly qualified. And then, right in front of everyone, Kusha, he ascended to Brahmalok. So, as was benedicted or predicted by Kusha, after the Yagya, a very qualified son was born to Kushanab. And the name of the son was Gadhi. So Vishwamitra, he is the son of Gadhi. And Gadhi had an elder sister also by the name of Satyavati. So Satyavati was married to the sage Ruchika. This pastime will be spoken more later on. So Satyavati is married to the sage Ruchika, and she was extremely, extremely pious. So because of her piety, she ascended to heaven, and she became the river Kaushiki. And later on, in order to benedict the residents of the earth, she comes down as Kaushiki river in the Himalayas. So Vishwamitra's hermitage is on the banks of the river Kaushiki. So he says, I live there because of my strong affection for my elder sister. So he had only descended for this purpose. So next day, Vishwamitra is leaving Siddha Ashram, and the residents are aware that he won't be coming back, because he had essentially come to accomplish a purpose. And there was... Who's this?
I give you also
Priyanka. Priyanka, can you mute yourself?
host, you might be able to mute also.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. I think it worked. Thank you. Even that was sweet, right?
Prabhu, you muted yourself.
Oh.
Is muted. Yeah.
Now I'm unmuted. Okay.
Prabhuji, very sorry if there was disturbance from my end.
No worries, Prabhu. I was saying that even that was sweet.
Sorry, so sorry.
So next day,
Over 1 million 5-star reviews. Join our movement today at thriveCosmetics.com.
wow, today is interesting, right? Who's this now? That's Piali. But
Hey,
Piali.
sorry, Prabhu. That was from my phone.
Oh, okay. No worries. So next day Vishwamitra is leaving Siddha Ashram. The residents over there know that he won't be coming back because he resides in his ashram by the Kaushiki river. He had only come back. One was to help to perform this yajna for the benefit of mankind, and of course the hidden purpose was for Lord Ram, that he had a role to play in the pastimes of Lord Ram, and his role was actually to get Lord Ram and Sita Devi together. So when Vishwamitra is leaving, then so many residents of Siddha Ashram, they cannot bear separation from him. That's the attraction of a devotee. That they're very attractive to everybody. So some of the sages there are accompanying Vishwamitra to Mithila. So 100 carts are filled with all the paraphernalia for yajnas, because wherever they go, it's a many-day journey. They stop, they perform the yajnas, and as they're leaving, the residents of the Siddhashram, even the animals, they're following Vishwamitra because they're unable to bear separation from him. And then finally Vishwamitra, he goes and affectionately talks to all of them and pacifies them and convinces them to return, and which they eventually do. And Lord Ram and Lakshman with Vishwamitra, they now continue on their journey. So eventually they come to a river by the name of Son River. So while they are then Vishwamitra, he asks his disciples and others that you arrange for boats so that we can cross the river. And at that time Lord Ram, he notices that further down the river there are sand bridges that are fording the river. So he comes to Vishwamitra and he says that we don't have to take these boats. We can simply cross the river on these natural bridges that are formed. And Vishwamitra actually says something that is very similar to the famous verse that appears in Mahabharata. So Vishwamitra says that idam abravit esha panta maya udhishtai yena yanti maharishya. So esha panta maya udhishta, that my proposal is, esha panta is, in terms of the route to follow, my proposal is yesha yanti maharishya, what has been spoken by the sages in the past. So it is a kind of an indirect chastisement to Lord Ram, done with a lot of love, basically for our benefit. And there is a very similar verse that is spoken by Yudhishthira in Mahabharata, where Yudhishthira says that Tarku pratishta shrutayo vibhinna nashav rishir yasya matam nabhinnam dharmasya tattvam nihitam ghuyam Mahajano yena gatha supanta. And he says, Tarko prathashta suratya bhinna. That arguments by nature are inconclusive. Because argument is more, it's more demonstrates how well can a person defeat the other person. So he says that dry arguments are inconclusive. Then Nasha Vrishir Varsya Matam Na Bhinnim. That a great rishi, a muni, whose view does not differ from another person is not considered to be important. Srila Prabhupada would say that scholars, they become important by refuting the statements of other scholars. So if somebody comes up and says that I completely agree with everything that Einstein has said, it's not going to get him much fame. But let's assume he comes and says that theory of relativity is wrong. The next day he'll probably get a Nobel Prize. So it's the nature of academia that they get fame by refuting. And the bigger person they refute, the more fame they get. So he says, Nashta Vrishayasya Matam na bhinnim. Matam means opinion, they should differ. Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guyam. And he says the secrets of dharma, guyam, the confidential secrets of dharma, they're not revealed by all this. They're not revealed by dry inconclusive arguments. They're not revealed by debates between different scholars. Then how are they revealed? Mahajana yena gatha supanta. By following the footsteps of the previous great personalities. Right? So this was actually one of Srila Prabhupada's favorite verse, because the whole process of Krishna consciousness is based on following the orders of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. And we see that even though we may not be big scholars or we may not be performing severe austerities, but we see that if we read the scriptures, it is difficult to immediately absorb it in our lives, because scriptures by nature are generic and often confusing. And if we try to get information by tuning on to the I forget, there's a channel in TV channel in India where there's always somebody speaking on spiritual topics there. And if you watch it long enough, you'll see that they are contradicting one another. Right? So it's very difficult to get anything that is conclusive from there. So really speaking, the only way to make spiritual advancement is by Mahajanayana Gatha Supanta, by following the footsteps. And footstep doesn't mean that you imitate. Footstep means that follow the instructions also of your spiritual master, of those who are in the parampara, and their understanding of the scriptures. That's why Srila Prabhupada, he took so much time to write purports, because the scriptures in themselves are ambiguous for a reason. So Bhagavad Gita has, at the time when Prabhupada wrote the commentary on Bhagavad Gita, he writes in the introduction that as of now there are more than 2,000 translations of the commentaries on the Gita. Now there are probably a lot more. And the few that I have read, they don't agree with one another. They have different interpretations. Often it's the commentator who is presenting his own views but using Krishna to support his or her perspectives. So that's what Prabhupada would say, stay true to your parampara. Stay true to your disciplic succession. It does not mean that the other disciplic successions are false. It does not mean that the other sages are all speaking nonsense. There are many bona fide spiritual leaders. But just like again, Prabhupada used this example that just like there are many beautiful women in this world, but for a husband, his wife is the most beautiful woman. And she continues to stay throughout the life. Like if he says that, after 5 years he says there's another beautiful woman and he goes after her, and after 5 years he goes there. So that's just, that's just being in the mode of ignorance. Now, when the husband says my wife is the most beautiful woman, it does not mean that it's a factual statement. And there are obviously other women who are also beautiful. But it means that for him she is the most beautiful woman. So for a disciple, the guru is the authority. It does not mean that the other gurus are fake, all the other gurus are fake. It does not mean that all the other sampradayas are false. It does not mean that all the other commentaries are inaccurate. Most of them are, but there are of course many that are also bona fide. But what it means is that which you take shelter of, you should hold tightly onto it. So this particular verse in the Ramayana is very much commented upon by the acharyas, because it kind of carries the essence of spiritual practice. It's the difference between a person who is serious and desiring to make progress, and between a dilettante. So it's something that acharyas speak quite a bit about. So after they cross the river, then they come across another river that is very, very beautiful, and the waters out there are cooling and soothing. And of course, Lord Ram and Lakshman, they turn to Vishwamitra. They say, what is this? This looks like it's divine. And Vishwamitra says, yes, this is river Ganges. So Lord Ram asks that, what is special about Ganges? So then Vishwamitra begins to talk about the history of the river Ganges. So he talks about so he kind of talks a little bit about the river itself. So he says the river Ganges is it considered to have it flows in three directions. So it flows in the heaven, where it is known as Mandakini. Then it flows into the ocean, where it is known as Jahanvi. And then it flows its own course in a westerly direction, where it is known as Ganga. So according to some, the river is considered to be three courses, because it is flowing in the upper, middle and lower kingdoms. So it is coming all the way from the top of the universe, flowing to the middle planets where the earth is, and going all the way down to Patal. So that is why it is considered to be a three-course river. Then he begins to speak about Lord Shiva. So he says that once upon a time, the personification of Himalayas, the king of Himalayas, by the name of Himavan, was married to an Apsara by the name of Meena. And they had two daughters. The elder daughter was Ganges. So she is the presiding deity of Ganges, and the younger daughter is Uma. So Uma became famous for her austerities. that she would go without eating. Uma means, literally Uma means, so she was performing such severe austerities that her mother once come and said that you stop doing this. So Ma in Sanskrit means no, and U is like you. So she said, Uma, that please stop doing this. So that's how she got the name Uma. She's also Parvati, because she's the son of Parvat, Himalaya Parvat. So that's how she got the name Parvati. And then because of her austerities, she was qualified to marry Lord Shiva. So Lord, when Shiva and Parvati married, then they went into this mode of enjoyment. And for 100 years, they were completely absorbed in this enjoyment. So they were so absorbed in the enjoyment that the devas began to get worried. So they worried about two things. One was, they were worried about a progeny being produced by the union, because both were very, very powerful personalities. Parvati Devi, most powerful of the ascetics. Lord Shiva, greatest of the yogis. And they said, if a personality is produced by the union, then difficult for anybody in this three worlds to control that personality. They were also concerned that Lord Shiva, he is on this extended mood of enjoyment, and Lord Shiva is also one of the protectors of the devas. So they were actually left without protection. So they were getting beaten up by the asuras. So they went to Lord Shiva and prayed to him. And Lord Shiva, of course, is pleased. So he said, what is it that you want? And the devas said that, please give us this benediction that you will not have a child with your wife. And Lord Shiva said, okay, so be it. So actually Lord Shiva and Parvati Devi, they don't have any children. So but then Lord Shiva said that because of this prolonged period of enjoyment, my virya is semen, my semen is produced, what do I do with it? So the devas had another conference, and they said that only Agni Dev has the ability to hold your semen. So Agni Dev took the semen of Lord Shiva, which was burning with effulgence. Now Parvati Devi got very angry because it's the aspirations of a wife to have a child by her husband. So she cursed the devas. She said, because of you, I will not have a child by my husband. You all will never have any children. So the devas, because of the curse of Parvati, they are incapable of having children. The only time that they do have children is when they consort with the mortals, with the humans. That's the only time when they have children. But amongst them, they don't have any children. So this was a modification by Lord Shiva. See, I cannot reverse what my wife has said. So in addition to that, the Veera of Lord Shiva, in addition to being taken by Agni, it also fell on the earth planet. And because of it, it is said that all the gold and the silver and the precious metals, the mines, they are essentially produced from Lord Shiva's virya. So Parvati Devi was actually angry at that time also, and she cursed Mother Earth also, even though it was not really her fault. But she was angry, and she said, I could not receive, this was for me, I could not receive it, but you received it. So she cursed her that your surface will become all uneven. There will be mountains and valleys, there will be deserts, and there will be swamps. So because of that curse, then Mother Earth became as it is now. She also cursed Mother Earth that you will never have any children. So again, the children of Mother Earth are born in extraordinary circumstances. Like Narkasur is born in contact with Lord Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu, of course, is not subject to any curses. And Sita Devi, who is also considered as the daughter of Mother Earth, she is Lakshmi Devi. So they are exceptional circumstances, but otherwise, Mother Earth does not have any children. So by this time, Lord Shiva is very scared of Parvati Devi, that she is cursing everybody around her, and he's thinking that she might curse him also. So he quietly goes away, and he goes to a place known as Himavad Prabhava. So he went there and went into deep meditation over there. So time passed, and with Lord Shiva again gone, the Asuras again began attacking the Devas, and they started traumatizing the Devas. So Devas went to Lord Brahma, saying that last time we went and spoke to Lord Shiva, we got ourselves into a lot of trouble. So don't know what to do now. You help us, because these Asuras, they are harassing us. So Brahma said that Agni is still holding the Virya of Shiva. So ask him to deliver it to Mother Ganges. Now remember, Ganges is the elder sister of Parvati. So he said, you go and you pray to Mother Ganges, and if she agrees, then ask Agni to deliver the Virya to her. So they went and they propitiated Ganga Devi. She agreed, and then she received the Virya of Lord Shiva. But when she received it, it started burning in her, and she said that I cannot hold it anymore. And on the advice of Lord Brahma, she delivered immediately a child on the mountain side of the Himalayas. And when that child appeared, then Brahma asked the Kritikas to take care of the child. So the Kritikas, the 6 Kritikas are the presiding deities of the constellation Kritika. And when the six young women came, then the small child, in order to see all of them, or in order to feed from all of them, he assumed 6 faces, and he became famous as Kartik. So Kartik then became the general of the Devas, and being a part of Lord Shiva, he was as powerful. In fact, in one of the Puranas, he actually he goes and he boasts to his father that I'm actually more powerful than you, because you have only 5 faces, I have 6 faces. And he also, another pastime, he instructs his father. So that's how he gets, Kartik is also known as Swaminathan. So Swaminathan means that one who is the spiritual master of So Nath means one who is the protector of everybody. Right? So Lord Shiva has that name Nath. And because he instructed Lord Shiva, he got the name Swaminath. He is also known as Skanda. And the Skanda Puran, which is actually the longest Puran of the 16 Purans, it has pastimes of Kartik and many valuable instructions. Skanda Puran is often quoted in the other Purans. Skanda Puran and Padma Puran, two long Purans, they're quoted everywhere. And also because the Purans are so long and they contain almost all the pastimes, people will generally say it's in the Skanda Purans, and they'll probably be right because almost all the pastimes are there in these two Purans. So, having spoken about the presence of, introduce the character, the personality, the presiding deity of Ganga as the personality who delivers Skanda, as the person who is the elder sister of Parvati, then Vishwamitra describes the pastime related to the descent of the Ganga. And that I will speak about next week, because it's a fairly long pastime and I don't want to leave it in between. So I'll leave some time for any discussions or comments, and after that we will do our chanting and our Singdev prayer.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So we are hearing about Uma and Parvati she is the consort of Lord Shivji in this yuga. Is she the same as Sati, which we are reading in Bhagavatam, who is wife of Lord Shiva and daughter of Daksha? So is she the same personality?
Same personality, you're right. So when Sati Devi gives up her body, then after that she appears again as Parvati Devi. Same personality, just different parents. Sati is born of Prajapati, Daksha and Akuti. Prasuti, sorry. Prajapati, Daksha and Prasuti. And as we know, Uma is born of Himavan and Mena.
So Ganga Devi, who was the older sister of Sati Devi, she's there in the previous pastime also when there were 16 sisters. There were 16 sisters, right? And Sati Devi was the 13th one. And
she is not there in the previous pastime. So she appears as the daughter of Himavan. That's the first time I remember her being introduced. There may be some other antecedents, but she's not. In a previous life, she wasn't the sister of Sati Devi.
But Parvati ji or Sati Devi, she is eternal consort of Lord Shiva.
She's eternal consort. She is Maya Devi. She's the external energy of Lord Vishnu. So yes, she's eternally with Lord Shiva.
Thank you, Prabhu. So so you said external energy of Lord Vishnu. So she's same as Durga Mata or Vaishnu Devi or all those goddesses as well.
Yes.
Is she the same personality?
She is the same personality. Because when later on we'll see that, or you must have seen when reading Bhagavatam, that when by the order of Krishna, when she transfers Balram to the womb of Rohini, and then later on when Krishna appears himself, then Vasudev takes Krishna to to Gokul, and the daughter of Yashoda is the same personality, Maya Devi. So when Vasudev gets Maya Devi back, then Krishna says that you will be known by all these names. So the names that you were saying, that Vaishnavi and Durga and some other names that I don't remember, but she said at different places you'll be worshipped by these names, and he glorifies her eternal position. It's not that she takes that position at that time, but he glorifies her position. That those who are averse to me, you will bewilder them. Those who are favorable to me, you will act as the agent to help them come to me. So her position that way is eternal.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, like we say that in the spiritual world, like we have an eternal body. So when Sati Devi, she burn herself, and does the body changes or she has the eternal body then? How to understand?
So Sati Devi is not in the spiritual world; she's in the material world. Right?
Okay.
So she is the person who is the superintendent of the external energy of Krishna. Yogamaya is the spiritual personality. She has an eternal body, and she's in the spiritual world. But that's why we see that Sati Devi has a point of time where she takes birth, she dies, she takes birth again, and then when the universe is finished, Lord Shiva goes away, she also goes away. So a very exalted personality, but nevertheless material, in the embodied soul.
Okay. Makes sense. And the second thing is a little bit, I don't know how to ask this question, because when you see that Ganges are flowing from like upper planetary system to the earth, but if you cannot do anything like, no satellite will show those kind of picture, any water coming apart from the earth itself, from outside any planets, it's kind of very.
So there's a couple of ways of understanding this. So later on, Ganges is glorified because there are some rivers that are populated by rain, and there are some rivers that are not populated by rain. So rivers that are populated by rain, so those who follow the scriptures strictly, so for 2 months in a year, those rivers are considered to be unclean. So these are the 2 months of the monsoon when the rain falls. So at that time it is prohibited to enter into that river and take a bath because of the effect of the monsoon. Not for Ganges, because Ganges appears from a source in the Himalayas. That's why she is considered to be the father. The source of the Ganges is considered to be subtle, because if you go to Gangotri, right, then you will see a cave from which the river is coming. It's a closed cave from which the river is coming, and there is no external source for it. So it's considered that it is being populated in a subtle way by Akash Ganga, by the Ganges that flows from the sky. Similarly, it falls from Earth to the lower planets. That also you don't see, but is considered to travel on in a subtle way.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Very, very fascinating class, Prabhuji. Like, I am understanding now that how many times we hear Ramayana, when from devotees, Ramayana or Bhagavatam, or from devotees, like there is always new enjoyment, new enjoyment. Like I'm so fascinated, like, the dynasties I might not be able to remember, but certain other details, like why Mother Parvati and Lord Shiva never have the children of their own, and also how Mother Ganges begetting Kartikeya, and why he got Kartikeya name, Swaminathan, these names, and Armugam is 6 faces. That also, we hear so many names, Prabhuji, but we are not sure why they got those names and the histories behind it. I'm actually thrilled, Prabhuji, to hear today's class. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is.
And also shocked how Devatas could ask that kind of boon, not to have children.
Yeah, they tend to. I notice they do tend to get into trouble. They ask for things and then they get into trouble, and they're almost like in a country you have the president, you have the people at the top, the politicians and all that. Most of the time they're running the country, they're doing their things, but then once in a while there's a scandal, and there is Monica Lewinsky, and there is all that stuff going on. So I see that in the pastimes of the Devas also. And if you read some of the more Rajasic and Tamasic Purans, then some of the stuff they get into is really, it would tend to bewilder a person. Sometimes they're very petty. They can, even we'll see later on how Indra at times becomes very petty. So petty means that small-minded. They will, they'll take offense a little bit of small things, or they'll get angry at, like Vayudev, right? He was propositioning young girls. He was essentially trying to seduce them with eternal youth, and then they say no, and he gets angry and deforms them. And Vayudev is Vayudev, like he's a powerful personality. It is. I agree with you. It's fascinating. Thank you, Akshay Prabhu.
Even with all that, Prabhuji, the message is not missed. The Mahajanayana Katha Sukunta, and even when you are sharing the dynasties. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Akshay Prabhu?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for a very nice class. As Ravi Prabhu was saying, so much deeper facets and so many details about Ramayana. So Prabhuji, I had 2 questions. First was, does Ramayana, is it a part of Itihas? Is it considered as that?
Yes. So Mahabharata and Ramayana, they are considered to be Itihas. Now, there are 2 Ramayans. There is Valmiki Ramayana, which is the most famous with 24,000 verses. And there is a Ramayana that comes as part of Bhavishya Puran, which is also quite long. I believe it is 6,000 verses. And it supplements the Valmiki Ramayana. So it expands upon some of the pastimes. It adds some more details. Like this whole thing about Lakshman Rekha, right? That's not there in Valmiki Ramayana. It's there in Adhyatmik Ramayana. Some of the more interesting pastimes, the battle pastimes, they're not there in Valmiki Ramayana. So what Tulsi essentially did was that he combined both of them. In his Ramachandra, he took a little bit of Valmiki Ramayana, took a little bit of Adhyatmik Ramayana, and then he kind of wrote it in Maithili. He wrote it in, I forget which language he wrote it in, but in some local dialect he wrote it in.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. And the second question is, what does Srila Prabhupada say, where does Ramayana fit in, or what does it do for devotees? As there's this understanding of Bhagavad Gita is for someone, Bhagavatam is for Abhidaya and so on, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Where does Ramayana fit in over there, Prabhuji?
Srila Prabhupada did not speak a lot about Ramayana. In a general way, he said that there are a lot of transcendental literatures that need to be translated, but he did not give any specific instructions to translate or comment on Ramayana. I mean, of course, he talks about, because Ramayana appears in Bhagavatam also in the 9th canto. So there he speaks about it, but there it is very sankshep. It's very in a very summary way. The whole Ramayana, so long pastimes, one verse Sukadeva Goswami says. That's what it's there. There he comments on it. But otherwise, as far as I know, he did not specifically speak about Ramayana. He gave classes on glories of Lord Ram, like a Ram Navami, or he gave classes on glories of Lord Ram. And Lord Ram is after Krishna, the closest incarnation is Lord Ram, right? Because in the Vaikuntha, the highest planet is Ayodhya Puri. Above all the other planets, above all the other forms of Vishnu, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Anirudh, all the other Chaturbhuj forms, Lord Ram's Ayodhya Puri is there. According to some acharyas, it is actually beyond Vaikuntha. It's below Golok but beyond Vaikuntha. So Srila Prabhupada spoke about the position of Lord Ram, spoke about how the Hare Krishna Mahamantra can be considered to be glorifying Lord Ram. He did not do a deep exposition on Lord Ram. He did not forbid it. It's just that he was more focused on Krishna and his teachings and pastimes.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay. So if there are no more comments, then we can perhaps chant one round of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra together. If you can unmute yourself, and we'll chant. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare